So I thought I'd make a video that I thought was important for you to make. Going to be talking about a couple subjects. Today is Dia de los Muertos, which is today's celebration of the dead. And it's not supposed to be a celebration of, obviously, negativity. It's supposed to be a celebration of life. And for those that have passed on and they visit us in spirit. And so the Mexican culture, they offer food. And some people, do it hugely proportionally. Some people don't believe it at all, but it's pretty well known in Mexico, right? And so I wanted to say this because I was thinking a couple of subjects. And two was one about Ivan and one about some events that happened whenever I was 16 years old at a boot camp. And one was Ivan. What I couldn't remember a couple of days ago, I was trying to remember what it was, and I just now remembered it was, I used to go to this kid named Sean's house, and he was a blonde-haired, bleach blonde-haired kid, like natural, and he was like a big kid, like he was big, like heavy set, big. And I remember being a kid, and I used to go to his house when I was a kid. And I actually met him. I don't know how I met Sean. I don't know if he was through Ivan or somehow other way, but I think it could have been through Ivan. And then Sean asked me, hey, you want to hang out and kick it? So I used to go to Sean's house when I was a kid, this blonde hair, bleach blonde haired kid. I mean, he was like fucking 100% German. He had like thin, like baby. He looked like he had baby blonde hair when he was like, even when he was like a teenager. And I remember going to his house, and he wasn't a father figure, and he had a little sister. And remember he had a bunch of movies, and Ivan used to go over there because. And bring a couple of friends, and I used to go there because he had a trampoline. He was a kid with a trampoline. We used to jump on his trampoline, and he had a pretty big backyard, and so he had a lot of video games as well. But we played video games here and there, but we usually just kind of jumped on his trampoline. And I remember as a kid, meeting his mom. And I don't know if his mom at the time, I think it was his grandma, because there was no father figure, and that's who took care of him. And I remember going into his room, and I had mentioned to this, I didn't associate with him later in life. I saw him later here and there in high school, but I never said anything to him. And he'd look at me like he recognized me, but I mean, he knew who I was, and I knew who he was, but I was very, very quiet, even to people that I talked to when I was a kid, and I just... I know that guy. We used to hang out. We were just kids, but we moved on. Whatever, new friends or whatever it is. But there was no really a grudge. There was no grudge at all. And I recall going, we were in his room and playing video games one day, and I asked him, he goes, so where's your mom? And your dad? And he goes, I don't know. And he didn't want to talk about it. And he said, and he could see he was kind of getting emotional. And he started crying, which is very, very unusual for any kid. Any kid to another kid to start crying was like, they thought you were a wuss or whatever. And it just, nobody does that. I mean, nobody does. And at least when you're a kid, right? Because you always think when you're a kid, you always have to be tough to your friends, right? And so he got like emotional, and he said that his mother had cancer and she died of cancer, and he visited her in the hospital, and he was very young. He was like 6 or 7 years old. And so I used to go over there. I think later in life he owned like a car auto shop, but I remember that very well. I remember. And because we used to play video games, and I was like, I didn't know, because when I said like, where's your mom? Sometimes it was very kind of difficult at times for other kids my own age at times to kind of understand where I was mentally, because my father was so old, and the kind of my father was a World War II veteran, born in 1925, so that mentality is very different, and he was a registered nurse, and he already had a wife that died in his arms, and my father wasn't afraid to tell me like medical terms of shit, you know, like when I was like 6 years old, my father was telling me his wife died with her mouth open, and they had to like make incisions to the jawline in order to shut her jaw, but she died gasping for air. And I would go to school and tell teachers this story, and they would freak out. Like, this little kid is talking about real dead bodies. And so I was very young, so it was normal for me to go ask questions, but to other kids, they were very sensitive, because sometimes they're very protective about things. But I guess it varies from personality. And so anyway, I remember that, and I used to go there with Ivan. He was another kid that used to hang around with me and Ivan. We used to go to his house and jump on the trampoline and hang out. So there's a couple of kids older than me that used to hang out. And later I found out, he used to play football. His name is Sean Blau. I know his last name is pronounced very weird. It's like Blaough, Blau, John Bloth or something like that. And he was the strongest. I know in his Facebook picture he looks real skinny now, real tiny. He was the strongest kid. He was benching, I'm going to say 450 or 475 pounds, almost 500 pounds off his chest when he was 16 years old. He was benching, I know, because Richard Murphy was benching 300 and like when he was 16 or late 17, or like 16, late 16 to 17, he was bench pressing at his max 375 and 350 to 375. And I remember in cafeteria break room, I was like, damn, because Richard was the strongest kid in middle school. Out of the entire middle school, he was the strongest kid. He was benching, I think, 300 pounds by the end of 8th grade, or 275 at the end of 8th grade. So when we got to, I was asking him how was he still the strongest kid, and who are the strongest kids now? And he goes, no, hell. He goes, no. There's a number of them that are a lot stronger than me. He goes, he said that there was you know who Sean Blau is? He goes, man, that fool's strong. And he said that but he's real big, and which is true. He used to walk around with this kind of real squinty eyes and just like kind of just pissed off. Like he never kind of had that much of a look whenever I at least remember, but he did have sort of a dangerous look. And I knew who Sean Blau was, right, because anyway, so Richard told me he was bench pressing 375, 475, 450 or 475, even close to 500 pounds when he was 16 years old. He was the strongest kid out of a population of 2,000 in the entire high school. I mean, massively strong. And was squatting a huge amount as well. But anyway, I thought I'd just share this story. But there was another story that I wanted to talk about, because I used to hang around with Ivan. With him, we would ride bikes and sometimes go to a friend's house, jump on the trampoline and shit, and kind of ride around our bikes, which is a very frequent thing. But the other story I wanted to talk about was when I was 16 years old, and I talked about this so many events, but not some of these details I want to talk about. Which was the guy that was a World War II veteran, not World War II. He was a Desert Storm veteran. He went to Desert Storm, and this guy I talked about, there wasn't a very large group class. There was probably 25 of us in the class at most, but it was a very big room, so it really didn't seem like that many people. Maybe 20 of us, 20 to 25, and we're all sitting around, and we're all just kind of, and he was just kind of telling us and sort of scouting his words out, and how he went to war, and because 9/11 just happened, right? And he was kind of in his military war sort of persona, and obviously not just because of the job site, because of the terrorist attacks. And he said, I talked about him, it's 130-degree temperatures, fucking oil rigs burning, bodies burning everywhere, maggots. He says that and he says there were maggots eating the bodies because in war, as we know, we don't see that much in the movies. But in the reality of it, when there's decomposing bodies in war, there's no one to pick them up, so they just rot, and the animals and the bugs show up. And for those that don't know this, I knew this when I was like in my teens. I learned this. A single fly, which is, a single fly can actually smell a dead corpse up to like 14 miles away or some crazy number like that. I know it's miles away. And they have done a test where they have put a dead corpse, a dead animal in a location and drop a group of flies fucking 7, 8, 14 miles away, and they fucking fly and find the dead corpse and lay their larvae into the dead corpse, and maggots start forming. And maggots only start forming because flies lay their larvae in it to then feed. When their larvae hatches, then they feed off the corpse to survive. And they disinfect, right? Because they even use them in medical. They even use them in the medical field, believe it or not, because they only eat bacteria and gunk stuff, and actually be a disinfectant. But they can actually smell. I don't know what it was, but I know that it's like an outrageous number of miles that they can smell a dead corpse. So if you're in a desert, obviously you don't know trees. There's nothing. So you can imagine 130-degree temperatures, and he says that these maggots would be eating these corpses, and it was fucking flies everywhere. And he says the flies would be laying on you and shit. And he said the fly, because he sort of expressed this in a way that it was a psychological trauma, that the flies would be eating the corpse and then they would fly on you. Just to be around, just like you're being pestered. And I remember him saying that. But, it's a tough situation. It's a tough situation because it doesn't matter anymore. I know that I was just thinking of that because it's like, oh wow, and I was thinking because, my mother, she doesn't have any idea. As protective as Marco and Julian were once they got their mansion and house, and you did the soul, oh look what I did, and you go to heaven because of what family life you gave her and your money spent. Doesn't change the brutal punishment what me and Frankie dealt with later in life. Because if it wasn't Frankie selling his ass, no, it was selling his ass because then you did it to me and my job sites, and then you did it there. And it's very difficult because my mother was very protective of me and wouldn't have liked it. And it's very brutal. It's very disgusting because my mother, for me to be prostituted to like a black person was like, I even got it from even some friends and relatives. Like I remember, because I'm Mexican, and and not only just because I'm Mexican, to get a good-looking Mexican girl or a white girl, they were okay with like a Chinese girl, but something that would blend into my own ethnicity. Sleeping with a black girl was like scolding my mother, was like throwing hot water, burning my mother with like hot water, throwing some cold water on my mother while she's in bed. And that was what you were doing, because I got prostituted when I was a kid when that whole Raquel situation happened. And I'm not saying I'm in regret. What I'm saying is that's what happened. And I know, very calculated, I know this mathematical problem. And I knew this because I remember this very distinctly, because the story about the Desert Storm guy, he was at Sequoia Academy. There was another boot camp that I had to go to, which was a little bit more worse, and that was more drill sergeant, barbed wire fence all around concrete. It was more military. So when we got there, there's a guy named Robert, whatever. I very distinctly 9/11 happened, and I was going to the nursing home, and I remember, this is whenever he was all training me about Miguel, how raping Frankie. And so the best thing, see, in the whole racist world, when they know Michael Jackson's involved, is throwing a black girl, because it would affect you. Black people know that. It's an instinct. All races know that. Once you get black, you stay there. Once you get black, you're always going to come back to that. And that's where they put you. And you get stamped. You get labeled, period. It was always like that in high school as well. Once a white girl got fucked by a black guy, no white guy will ever touch you again. None of them will. That was just a guarantee. And so it's like that in the Mexican community as well. So I say this because I remember I was talking to Lisa, and I really liked Lisa, and I remember I was very protective at that time, and I remember him going to this, and I thought my phone, I really believed my phone was tapped, and I believe my phone was tapped, and this is like right when 9/11 happened, and it was like either right before or right after, but I was talking to her, and I remember him going, and I remember I broke out of line, because everybody's like this, you have to stand in uniform, and as soon as I knew, he kept on antagonizing this guy raping Frankie, and how they were just controlling him. And they were just, we got this disciplined. They didn't do a goddamn thing. They didn't do shit. So it's just to clean up, because my mother's just stupid, and it's a profitable game for Michael Jackson. Because then he starts sort of playing himself like Michael Jackson. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, I take control. Military, yeah, I'm the sergeant. So anyway, it doesn't change the circumstances that I remember him doing that, and I broke out of line, and I looked at him like pissed. And this is like in my prime. I'm 16 years old. You're not about to take this beautiful girl away from me. And I remember just breaking out of line and going like, you're not going to touch her, motherfucker. Like, and I remember directly looking at him like, I don't think so, motherfucker. And I knew it was a racist, because whenever you're young like that, and you get a beautiful white girl, blonde girl like that, especially when they're young, the blacks don't like it, because it's something that they want to take away from you, or something they don't want you to have. And it is because of that very reason, because they can't. Just like when somebody's going to win the lottery and they don't want you to have it because they didn't, that's exactly what they did. In his job, he knows he could take advantage of it because of his position. Especially if he knows about Michael Jackson. Because remember, Michael Jackson will play out if we black his ass in. And that's exactly what happened. So I thought it was important for me to talk about this. I know that there's nothing that can be done about it anymore. But Dad had scolded me, because I remember when that happened, I remember I went to Robert Zarati's house, his dad, and, his family was ashamed of me, and it was like, you got with the black girl, Hector, you're so good looking, like, because everybody used to always say, Hector, you're so cute, you're such a good looking guy, oh my God, Hector, my beard then started to pop out, and it was something that, like, who did that? Like, they immediately knew, and I knew this too, because I saw this with Casey. Like when Casey Rickles passed away, when she found out that I had slept with a black girl, she got mad, and not just at me, but she looked and she got mad, and I remember her looking forward, like, yeah, right, you're here to take advantage of whatever the fuck you want, and I remember that. I very distinctly remember feeling that from her, and it felt so enriched. I feel so good, because she knew better. Women understand this mentally very well. So there's always this race war of understanding of what was going on, because it's that among the girls. So I thought it was important for me to talk about this. Because when that whole situation happened, and your only son gets milked like that, and he's talking about Barack Obama, then that's what you get. Oh, but my mom doesn't remember that, what you did to her son. Oh, it's just because give her a baby and put her brain right there. Thank you, stupid bitch. That's exactly what she is. And that's how they stamp her. But they won't tell you that in the public eye and actions. Oh, it's just time, and then you're dead. Time is gone. It's just like military, combat. You have a weapon much more powerful and you're trained to someone that doesn't in the battlefields, in the woods. You're going to kill your opponent, and the way that you pivot through everything is you keep going forward. And the military knows how to win a war, and that mentality of how ruthless it is to always stay on top of things. They learned this from the beginning of time. Caligula, Hitler, Stalin, many powerful leaders in the world in military war understood what is going to always lead you to the top of things and always the winner at everything. Emotions and all that other shit doesn't even matter. You're alive, you're dead, and I'm alive. I can go and readjust my brain to whatever it is. You no longer can and make any decisions. And everything you owned or thought you owned now becomes mine. And anything in the outside outskirts, then I can make decisions upon that. Family, decisions, history, future, and you're dead. You're worthless to any existence now. And so that mentality is what they carried. And it worked. But it's not respectful, it's not holy, it's none of the imaginary fairy tales, what we think of life. And they won't tell you that. But I think it's important for me to talk about because how ruthless that really was. And, obviously, at that time, nobody ever believed me how racist it was. Michael Rossiter is the one that led me to that as well. No, you don't get a white girl, you get a nigger. That's exactly what his mentality was, and he would use. And so when you downplay such disgusting behavior, and you do this to my mother, you do this to her very core, where she doesn't have a voice anymore. And then you give her a baby, and then that's how you play it off, and then you play it off again. But hold on, it's none of their fault. It was Kenneth. Because you never understood. My mother never didn't know, because she knows you don't want me doing this to her son. Y'all knew, once you get the teachers to do it, Mr. Barry and these other teachers, and the blacks that were all being contacted, that I met Michael Jackson, and oh shit, okay, throw him a black right over here. Guess what? You staple that. Because Kenneth is working for the black radio station. He's a transgender. He doesn't understand real women. He's part of the LGBT community. You don't understand anything about being straight. And I think it's one of the most horrible things and selfish things, because they knew they could get away with it. The president knew that he could use that because they knew they would profit off of all the blacks. Oh, you got with the black? Oh, we don't know the details. Yeah, you want the black niggas. Hell yeah, you know what I'm talking about right here. Yeah, black your ass in. Yeah, you got you. And everything you give birth to your words now when you say the racist shit, guess what? You got a blacked in already. So that's why they do that. They staple you immediately, cut your throat open before you even have a chance. And they break you down, and that's why to put you down, because all the faggots did it. And there were adults. Mr. Barry was one of the most disgusting, aggressive people at that entire school, that was very rigorously going through every detail and gritty about my family, my father, his money, and was fighting for Ken Cooper. Ken Cooper and Sarah Cooper, because remember, you got to keep the secrets to the gays, and then put Kenneth at the radio station, because that's when he had just started working for the radio station and had a couple of years already invested into that. So if you have Michael Jackson, it benefits, guess what, royalty, blonde hair, because you're not the one. It's just like how white guys, white families, like a mother, like a genuinely white father and a genuinely white mother, they don't want their beautiful white, blonde hair, blue-eyed girl getting with some dark black ass dude and having kids. Not him having it, but having someone else sell their daughter to because of some other cause. I'll take what's yours, I'm gonna pawn it off, and then it's time for Kenneth. Oh, I don't know, I was just being hip hop with my true niggas. they know that the excuses and conversations will always come out to what they want. They have already, because remember, my mother has a brain the size of a fucking peanut. They know that she's been raped, abused for so many fucking years. Frankie's being fucked in his ass. The police department already knows about it because Ken Cooper's the head of the police department and detectives. He's the white spokesman, and every time you get on the air on the radio, he's doing the spokesperson for the police department. I mean, racism, but he talks like the black niggas because he's black, pro-black, and it's never racist. No, it's exactly that. Oh, but let me mix it up and tell you how I'm Hispanic. No, you're not. You don't know Spanish. You don't eat Mexican food. You don't know shit. What he saw was fucking on TV Mexican, and he just put it on a radio station and labeled it that. And it was very discriminative. So I think it's a very important for me to talk about this because, there's so many facets that my mother wasn't able to talk about, and I thought it was important for me to talk about because I've surrendered to the whole situation. There's nothing that I can do as angry, as bitter as I was being sold like that. And then I got sold later in life like that again and again, just like my mother. And they continue to bacon off whatever the fuck they want. And I think the icing on the cake that would probably irritate me more if I were to find out that Raquel had a miscarriage and it was my child. I never wore a condom, and I never threw my semen into her, and like on purpose, ever, one time. And I didn't want to because of that very reason. And I never did. I never ejaculated into her ever one time because I didn't want a child with her. I didn't. It was just like sex, and it was just like, when you're young like that, your testosterone, my testosterone was so high wanting to have sex, I was like wanting to it was hard to withstand I had a hard time keeping it down, a hard time keeping it down. And, walking to school, having erections for 6 hours solid straight, during class and during school. I mean, continuously, and it was hard for me to keep it down, even when I wasn't necessarily thinking about sex. It was peaking so frequently. So, the homosexuals and Robert and this guy, Sergeant Robert, who I don't even know was in the military, and the other people that were there, they all know this. They know because they're homosexuals, and they know how to apply that homosexuality to sell your ass the way they sell women. Oh, you're a straight woman? Okay, go make babies and that. Because that's why Hollywood the way that it is, and straight men aren't successful. That's why there's no artists, painters. That's why there's very few musicians. That's why there's very few artistic people that are straight, that are men, that exist. Because all we all do is breed, and you only have time to take care of the kids and pay the bills. And that's it. So gays just pick off whatever woman they want to sell you, and they go all run off and do their gay shit behind closed doors. It's straight men have it a lot worse. And we are responsible for putting life into this world. We are the only ones that only make life happen. Life all completely stops if there's no men having sex with women. If there is no semen going into a woman, all human life stops, including the breed that you desire. So when there's a white guy that's gay and racist, and he sees whatever is a preference to his skin color, he'd be like, oh, blonde hair and blue eyes, yeah, because then if the kid comes out gay, he's one of your own, and he also passes a generation for your breed and your team to say that maybe you get the selection as well as I get the selection, whatever ones I want, or whatever other selections I want, the hair color, the breed, and it's an instinctive behavior that we all have. Even if you are gay or not, that's an instinctive behavior that you start pawning and selling, and that's what they do to the men as well. But when you have Michael Jackson in the picture, immediately, because remember, staple you and put a stamp on it very quickly because you got the stupid bitch in play. And it's very difficult, because as much as I surrendered about the whole situation, that's what they did. I remember the looks, I remember the actions and the words that they were doing in my classes. It was spread like wildfire because Frankie had been raped so many times. They had to also find an excuse because this is about Michael Jackson and the blacks and Barack Obama and the blacks. Because this guy was bringing up President Barack Obama when I was inside that church. He kept on bringing him up, saying he was a governor in Florida. Was it Florida? I don't even know. I think he said Florida or something. I don't know what state it was. It wasn't in Texas, but he was a Senate. He goes, he's going to thinking about running for president or some shit. And I don't know if he said I don't know if he said he heard it on the radio or saw a broadcast of it. So this guy had a full outcome of what my family was like. Kenneth working at the radio station, my dad and his money. They were all jealous. They were all jealous about what I was going to inherit and Michael Jackson. And they knew they wanted to make their Martin Luther King movement upon me. So that's why I think it's important for me to talk about the circumstances, because they're safe always over there with their money bank. That's what they're doing the whole time. And if they sell me, they're like, oh yeah, thanks Kenneth, you sold his ass to the black niggas. You know how we were not in racism, 50 Cent. You know, we talk about like we're cool now, hip hop. I'm telling you that is a very core heart penetration to my mother. Very. That is like, it's like killing your son. Like if you didn't just throw her fucking bitch ass daughter in the fucking trash can and make it about hip hop keynote 97 on the beat by every word and action in your family. No, now it's the president. No, now it's the excuse for this, and it's a very nasty cycle. I'm really tired of talking about so much of this, but yeah, it's a forfeited victory. But at least I want to know that I gave birth and talked about it, because this is how this disgusting behaviors. And I couldn't say that I didn't regret it all the way, you know. Obviously, at the moment that it was happening, but I wasn't allowed choices then. I wasn't. You gotta understand that I wasn't. And I not only wasn't being pinned down, that whenever I was, I mean, let me tell you, Lisa will tell you, I'm telling you, okay, for a guy to approach a white girl that I was talking to in his house, when he's already been coming to my house for like a fucking year, and charge at me, like when I'm sitting on the couch with her having a moment, like a real like soft moment talk. And it is full blunt when he approaches. You can't have that. I told you, you can't have. I mean, literally, just looking at him like, you can't have that. You know what I mean when I look at you. You can't have that. And you could ask. You couldn't get any more red flags when she looked at him like crazy, and he sort of backed off. Like, you better back the fuck off. Like because she could tell he wanted to control her pussy. He's bisexual. You know, he's had sex with women, but I talked about this whole situation. He tried to pull my pants down when I passed out, and I saw at the corner of my eye he was waiting for me to overdose. But nobody wants to believe me, and because he knew he could kill. I know him too well, and I calculated him. I knew exactly what he was doing. I knew 100%. But nobody's ever going to believe it. They're going to get the story that they want, but because of tragedy. And but I think it's important for me to talk about, because it's so discriminative. Because you knew Michael Jackson was into the picture. You knew you had to go help Kenneth at the radio station. Oh, that's not what I mean. And then he milks it off later down the road because you just didn't have any involvement in it. But these motherfuckers over here played the racist black shit card on me. Because no, if it's not that, then it's going to be the whites and the gays. Because when the whites don't work out, no, and it's for the gays. And that's what they're doing. So it's a very big tug war on both ends. But regardless, whatever, it's going to pan out for whatever they want. There's nothing that can be done about it. But at least I said something to my life. I said something. Prejudiced actions that were being done against me. You'll never get your life again. I'll never get my youth again. And then they took it again. No, you don't get that. That's what you get. No, you don't get that. Want a ticket? Oh, who's Keynote 97? This is Kenneth White Power. Oh, no, he's Mexican. Oh, let me tell you. Let me have a conversation. None of that. This was a full-blown race war. It bothered me a lot whenever I got older as well, I mean, when I remember there was discrimination, when I was like around a white girl they didn't like, but that's one thing that I, more than I remember anything, is the moment that he said, because I had, remember, been on the phone with her, and I had been talking to her already for a few numbers of months. I was going to boot camp. And I 100% believed and knew. It's not to say he didn't know about that particular situation that I was talking to her, but there had to have been, because he was gay, and the gay community transfers so much information toward one another in secret. It travels like wildfire. Like, Michael Jackson, Frankie got raped. Oh, well, Frankie got raped. Oh, Miguel. Oh, tell the whole school. Oh, okay, and it just goes like that, and they just form it and mold it to whatever story they want. And but I remember very distinctly believing him and thought that he was talking about Lisa, and I broke out a line, and I looked at him like, you better not fuck you, motherfucker. Because I knew this was a race war. Right when he did that, I knew this was a race war. You don't want me to get there because you don't want me to get a black girl, and you want it for your blacks. Because there was, when I went to school, let me tell you, when I was in high school, all the blacks were all in one group. All the preppy whites were on group, and then you had a small group that were sort of all mixed up, But the white preppy people stayed the white preppy people. They stayed white. You weren't really allowed to sit at their tables, and you might get one black guy, but he had to be nerdy, or he was like a star athlete football player. That's why. But you weren't allowed to be with them. You weren't allowed to sit at their table. And because they knew that you were after the women or were likely to talk to them, and the guys were like that. And I experienced that with friends as well, very much so. And it was something that was really pissed me off, really, really frustrated me whenever that happened, because I knew, and he was, because I immediately I got these flashes and this understanding that once they take me out of the picture, they're going to send some blacks right over there, to send over some blacks to her. And I knew that it was going to be connected to her and Michelle. And they were both wearing military. And they were also toying with the whole situation of my dead sister, bringing up a little cart and sort of coming over, getting some paperwork. And then, like, they were just doing all this just purely sizing me up. Just getting a feel for me of understanding. And I stayed very cardinal as the best way as I could. At that time also within that same year that was happening, because I went to that boot camp for a total of, I think, 2 years, for like a year and a half. The first time I went there, I occasionally went there. I had to do like 6 weeks, 2 months, every weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I lost my Saturday weekends for a couple months, and then 6 months later, 3 months later, I had to go again for like a weekend, 2 weekends, and then I'd have to go back again for another 4 weeks. And then I went there numbers of times, huge numbers of times. And obviously you have 9/11, but they're always going to make excuses because of that. But I thought it was important. I remember that very distinctly, is where I broke out a line. I said, not that motherfucker, fuck you. And I remember very distinctly, and I everyone's looking up ahead. I said, like, because he kind of looked at me. He goes, No, you don't get that. And he did it in a way, like, to let me know that's what you get. So I think it's important for me to talk about these circumstances, because my mother would have, my mother was just being gutted with a butcher knife right in her heart. And that it was because of this motherfucker over here at the radio station. That's why. Because when he's working for an all-black radio station, the blacks already know they got their blacks right over there, and they got the white guy over there, and they pawn me off, and they can victimize me, and they got Mike, and I'm the one that met Michael Jackson, and he's playing this game. Gotcha. But I think it's important for me to talk about this, because my mother would have wanted it to. So you make the story whatever you want. Obviously at the time, sex was sex at that time, but to do that to such, it's like any guy, any family. You go to a white family that has a precious blonde, blue-eyed girl or a princess. They do not want their child, who they are working hard to preserve, to then give them grandchildren, to go fuck a dirty, nasty black guy as they see things and have babies with them because of somebody else that sold them for a different exchange process. And then they just continue just loving the child because really what you did is you just pawned it off. You pawned it off and you sold it. That's what you fucking did. That's why whenever I was in Dallas recently, this black guy told me, he goes, yeah, I sold it to him. The reason they say that is because they're just cleaning up the psychological, emotional after effects in later past. It's just all psychological. That's all they're fucking doing. But it doesn't change the fact that was why. And he knew better. Keeping your mouth shut and doing this and how I'm being victimized, they know, but he knows. Oh, but I want her to be famous so bad. I'm right now watching, I swear to God, I'm watching on television, and I saw this guy referencing Robert Girardi saying, yeah, he ended up dying for it. And he's portraying himself like Kenneth was the one trying to find out whether Robert died for whose cause or whatever. Like, it's so fucked up because I'm watching Robert's dad die in front of me. Like, he has cancer, he's sitting next to me and he's dying of cancer. And it's about Keynote 97, I beat for Kenneth and Sarah Cooper. And you want to feel sorry for these guys, and then everyone else comes at me for it. Yeah, because that's just how the team worked, because then President did it too. Oh, it's just stay safe over there. And, oh, thank you, stupid, for dying in the middle. Oh, but I feel military sorry for the veterans that died. Fuck you. Oh, you're a traitor. So it's just, you're never going to win with them. You're not. There's no murder. There's no justice of getting a noose or fucking electric chair. There's nothing. And you know, it's brutal because you're doing this to such a poor person and so poorly educated. My mother was being ass fucked so that Kenneth could get the profitable gains and knew that he could just milk it and say, oh, well, I don't know. I was just being Kenneth Cooper, being cool with Sarah. And I just didn't know because my mom was, you know how my mom, I'm going to make excuses and talk about it. Let me tell you about how spring function works. They're geniuses scavenging in trash. That's what they are. They're geniuses in scavenging for trash. That's what they did. This was their profitable gain and where they wanted to put it. And that's what they did. And my mother, you know, when you rob somebody that's poor and doesn't have anything and is being raped and having their kids sold and don't understand that brutal amount of time and you steal from them, that's the highest level of disrespect and scolding that you could ever possibly do in life to such an innocent poor person that, okay, so if they got lucky enough to even have an opportunity and have to sacrifice their body, no, you're going to get the fucking money. And you're going to go police department, Sarah and Cam Cooper. And that's what they did. But it's too late. You make of it what you want. Eventually, the president will, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama and his people will get the story to whatever they wanted to place it in. You know, my mother, she knew it was a loss. They knew, okay, we'll get rid of Hector, black his ass in, take away whatever we want, and we'll throw him the white bitch later. And then you pat me on the back, and then Medal of Honor. And you understand how Jesus works because he took your daughter and then get your mother to know that she died for life to happen. And then military, you're immigrant, right? Okay, so then your daughter died, you've been slapped around, you get fucked in the ass. So you get used to death, throwing away your dead corpse sister, Miranda. And so you already understand that emotion of death, throwing away one of your own children. And then we can do this to Hector, because then that's Hector's, Celestina's child. And then that'll work for us, because it can be exchanged. The residue can be exchanged and transferred, transitioned over to Hector, so we can dispose of him, because she's already used to death. Remember when you feel like a murderer the first time you kill someone in real life. Once you kill 2, once you kill 3, once you kill 4, once you kill 1 million, what are you? You're a conqueror now. That's why.